Hey everyone, Chaps here, and let's talk about workshop dust collection. My workshop is in my basement, but my basement also serves as a workout area, laundry room, storage, and because of this, it's just not ideal to leave dust everywhere. I'm currently in the middle of some adjustments that should help improve things, and I figured I'd share my findings. Today, I'll be taking a look at the Dustopper, which should help with most of the dust that my shop vac will be sucking up. And soon I'll be putting up this Wen dust collector, which should help with most of the airborne dust in here. I'll admit that none of this is really the ideal setup, especially having expensive workout equipment right next to where I'm creating dust. But hey, you work with what you have, and hopefully this is good enough, and hopefully this Dustopper will help improve things. So what is the Dustopper, and why did I want one? Well, basically it's a device that functions between your shop vac and the dust that you're picking up, and should help collect all the dust in this bucket before it gets to the shop vac. If you don't use a bag in your shop vac, it's just going to keep the filter cleaner for longer. And if you do use a bag, like I do, it just means that you're going to reduce how often you need to change out the bag. It hasn't been a huge problem for me, but with the recent addition of a planer, that's quickly changing. As you may have seen in my planer video review, it kicks out some serious sawdust. That's going to fill the shop vac up like crazy. So here it is, just a simple lid for a 5-gallon bucket. The shop vac connects over here, and then this hose goes to where we're picking stuff up. This pulls the air in through the hose and it enters the bucket. And due to the design of the lid, the dust starts spinning around in the bucket, and as that air gets pushed to the outside and the dust with it, that dust hits the wall, it slows down, and as it slows down, it can't keep spinning and it just falls to the bottom of the bucket. Then the air gets sucked back up through this to your shop vac, but it's not strong enough to pull the dust up with it. So all the dust stays at the bottom of the bucket and the air gets sucked up into your shop vac through this hose at the top. So yeah, in theory, most or all of the dust should stop in this bucket and keep your shop vac cleaner for longer. But does it work? Well, quite simply, yes, it does work. I've been extremely pleased with it. I haven't done tests yet to see how well, but I've been very pleased and I can say that it does work. We're about to do a test here and we'll see just how well. But first, I wanted to hit on a couple of drawbacks. First is that this thing isn't super stable. You now have a top-heavy bucket that's even more top-heavy. Coupled with the fact that you're probably pulling on the hose, which again is connected to the top, and yeah, this thing is prone to flipping over. I fixed this, sort of, by just tossing a scrap piece of 4x4 in the bucket to lower the CG. The other issue is the reduction in suction. It's just not pulling as hard as it used to. It's still good enough, and honestly the longer hose probably isn't helping, but there's a noticeable difference between the suction power with and without the Dustopper. This is to be expected with basically any cyclonic inducer though. You're increasing the tube length and you're adding additional friction. So yeah, obviously it's going to be weaker. And the last flaw with the system, if we can really call it that, is that it doesn't work very well with a system that has a blower built in. One big reason that I wanted my cyclonic inducer was because of the dust from the planer. My planer has a blower built in though, which means that rather than the shop vac sucking the air and the dust out, now the planer is blowing the air and the dust in. It's actually pretty cool. I can use the Dustopper without even plugging it into the shop vac. And look at this, nothing is escaping out of the exit that should be going to the shop vac. The issue though is that without a shop vac attached, there's nothing creating a vacuum in here and pulling the lid down. Because nothing's pushing this lid down, this seal around the outside here has a little bit of leakage. It's nothing major, but some of the dust can work its way up through the seal and spits down onto the floor. It's easy enough to clean up though. And really, this thing was not meant to be used with a planer like that. So the fact that it's working as well as it is pretty impressive. So those were the 3 flaws that I see with this thing. It's nothing major, just some minor inconveniences. But now, let's do a real test. How well does this thing really work? This is a bunch of dust that's been collected over the past few weeks. We've got some stuff from the planer, which is rather large, some medium-sized stuff from the miter saw and table saw, and some really fine dust from the sanders. It's mostly large particles, but there's also some of the nice fine stuff in here. We're going to start by weighing the bucket. It comes in at 2,404 grams, and that's the bucket, the 4x4 weight that I mentioned earlier, and any dust. Here's a second bucket that's empty, and it weighs 823 grams. Now I'm going to empty this first bucket into the second and bring that 4x4 weight back over to the original. And the original bucket now weighs 1740 grams, which means we had about 664 grams of dust in there. The second bucket now weighs 486 grams, which means we now have 663 grams of dust in there. So yeah, 663, 664, it's basically the same thing. I decided to weigh both just so that we could double check the weight and make sure that I didn't spill too much dust when transferring from one bucket to the other, and it seems like it worked out just fine. Now we're going to come over here and set up the Dustopper. It's pretty easy. We just attach one hose to the shop vac and one hose to where we're trying to pick stuff up and turn it on. Here we go. The second bucket is now empty and weighs 823 grams, again, as was expected. And the original bucket once again has dust in it, and it's weighing at 2,404 grams. So we captured 664 grams and we started with 663 grams. So it's capturing over 100%. I guess it's within margin of error of the scale and stuff, but really it's not going to be a super accurate thing. You don't know the exact size of the dust particles that I'm doing. This was not very scientific. But what it does tell you is that it works. It works really well, and I'm actually surprised at how well it works. There's plenty of these things on the market. The most popular one being the Dust Deputy, and Harbor Freight also has the Bauer Cyclonic Separator, and you'll see plenty of other brands out there. The more expensive ones usually have this traditional cone shape, and the cheaper knockoff ones more closely represent the Dustopper that I've got here. If you have a lot of dust in your shop, I can highly recommend getting one of these, if not the Dustopper, just any cyclonic separator. I avoided the Dust Deputy because of the price and also because it seems somewhat unstable with its really high CG. I also stayed away from the super cheap ones that seem like they're just a couple of right angles on a lid for a drum or a bucket. These devices create a near vacuum in the bucket, and if the bucket or the drum aren't supported well, it could implode, which there's plenty of pictures of online. At $40, the Dustopper from Home Depot seemed like a pretty middle-of-the-ground choice for me. It was the simple design with mainly just a right angle coming in, but it is supported to have that rigidity, so hopefully things don't explode. And it seems to be marketed a lot by Home Depot, so I kind of trust the brand a little bit there. And yeah, I don't regret my decision at all. Now, if any of you have questions about the processes here, any of the tools shown, just feel free to hit me up on Twitter or leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and dropping it a like. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.